Try three. Well, first, again, just kind of a little bit about myself. So I'm John Henthorn, and again, I'll be the moderator of tonight's panel. I've actually really been looking forward to this. While not a great public speaker, I've really been looking forward. I think we have a great topic, and as I got to know the panel, a really good and talented group of folks. A little about me. I guess I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for an energy consulting company headquartered in Dallas called DeGoyler McNaughton. And I've had senior IT leadership positions with Fortune 50 companies and mid-sized companies across my career. My career has taken me to assignments across the state of Texas, Anchorage, Alaska, London, England, Montana, Oklahoma, which might mean I can't hold a job. My wife and I moved to Plano about 4 years ago when I joined DeGoyler McNaughton, and we really love it. It's been a great place for us. When I'm not in Plano, you'll find me 2 hours west of here over at Possum Kingdom Lake, which is something I found when I came to Plano, and really had a chance to get to know it during COVID. And anything to do with lake sports or anything outside sports, I'm doing that out there. And one of the things I've enjoyed about moving to the Dallas area, and I came from a very small town before this, it's a great community of IT professionals, and I really enjoy just the opportunity to get to kind of share. And you know, oftentimes you find your stories is very similar to others' stories, so it's really good. I also seeing Robin here. I really want to thank Robin on these. It takes a lot of work to put on an effort, any sort of event like this, and I really appreciate all the behind-the-scenes things that go into happening to make this happen. So thank you. So let's get started with introducing the panel. You're quickly going to see this is a really experienced panel, and they're ready to share their expertise and their world experiences. So our first panelist is the Chief Digital Officer of UKG, Ultimate Kronos Group. He was formerly the CIO at McAfee. He was CIO, CISO at MGM Resorts International, was a founding member of the Retail and Hospitality ISAC, and served on Nevada's DHS Cybersecurity Commission. He's been actively involved in the Dallas security community for a long time. Being more active in the Dallas tech community. Please welcome Scott Howitt. A little earlier, you met this next panelist. The next panelist is the CEO and co-founder of Aiden. Again, our sponsor this evening. He was formerly CIO of the New York founding and CTO of the global private equity firm Hellman & Friedman. He successfully raised capital and increased Aiden's revenue 5 times in the past year across leading financial and life sciences companies. Plus, he's committed to building relationships in our Elevate Xchange community, as evidenced here tonight, and actively recruiting here in the Dallas market. So we wanted to put a little plug in case anybody's thinking about a transition. So welcome, Josh. Our next panelist comes with over 15 years experience in security. She played an instrumental role in 2 Fortune 100 companies in their security program transformations. And as the first head of Toyota Motor North America's cyber risk, she built a successful risk reduction program that is now the global standard across Toyota Motor Corp. She is now the Domain Information Officer of Global IT for Toyota Financial Services, leading security services in IAM around the globe. Welcome, Brandy Johnson. And our fourth panelist is Tom Sweet. Tom is Vice President of Cloud Services at GM Financial, where he leads a diverse team to deliver value to customers. He loves technology and both writes and speaks on IT transformation regularly. And he also wanted to note his opinions are his own and not those of his employer at GM Financial. And probably several of us probably have the same disclaimer here. So as we said earlier, we really want this to be a fun, interactive, engaging session. So I'll have questions, but I want you guys, I really want to make sure we get your questions in. Just kind of catch the mic holder, and then when you go to say your question, if you can say your name, maybe roll, and then kind of list your question. If I need to, I'll play it back, but hopefully the sound's good enough to where we can just go off the question. Okay? So our topic this evening is HyperAutomation for bimodal IT. We're going to be exploring this topic in detail, and the panelists will share their insights. To start to set the stage, I thought I'd do a little bit around quick definitions around the topic, and then we'll jump in. So bimodal. Bimodal is the practice of managing two separate but coherent styles of work. One focused more on predictability, often referred to as mode 1, and the second, referred to as mode 2, focuses more on exploration, experimentation, innovation to solve new problems and optimize areas of uncertainty. Enterprises are looking to marry more predictable evolution of product and technologies, which is again that mode 1, with new and innovative mode 2. The key is, in my opinion, both these modes are very important to your digital future. Currently, many of the legacy predictable processes and strategies are what keep the lights on. And they're key to kind of effectively delivering that day-to-day, getting your products out the door, getting your bills paid. But experts also agree that going forward, we need to continue to focus on things like nimble and agility, and this was where mode 2 heavily plays. So hyperautomation, it may be the answer to tackling this. So from a hyperautomation perspective, it really includes technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation, BPN, low-code, no-code tools, and really just taking advantage of those tools and applying to those mode 2 type of opportunities. So that's a little bit on the definitions. I think we need to get to the panelists, and I'm going to start first. Let me get my question list. Where was I going to go first here? Yeah, we'll start with Scott. Scott, as you think about this topic of hyperautomation for bimodal IT, what does it mean to you and your company? How have you tackled opportunities in this space?
So I've been fortunate that the last two organizations I've worked for are software manufacturers. So as the CIO, though, I'm involved in the internal IT of it. So as the manufacturing side is going, they're all mode 2, right? And they want to go as quickly as possible. They're thinking about new ways to automate their CI/CD pipelines and all that. And then the mode 1 guys, we're doing our core systems and our ERPs and all that, which don't necessarily lend to the easiest ways to do like hyper speed type stuff, right? But I do, as I get into it, I see that there's actually a lot of opportunity for both to learn from each other. And so, what I've seen is a lot of times the mode 2 guys don't really think through they want to push a code through faster, but they don't think about setting up super steady infrastructure. They don't think about setting up foundational elements. They don't think about all those things. But then on the other side of it, like we're going through it right now, we're doing a major ERP and Salesforce upgrade. And it's like, it's got to be this big bang where it all comes together at once. And it's like, actually, it doesn't. Like we can go do CPQ and figure that out, and then we can go and tweak the financial system to support it and all that. And it's just going to be easier if we do a big bang. And it's like, no, that's actually what you're used to, right? So like, let's take a note from them and what things can we learn to go a little bit quicker on. And so I think that's it's been fun seeing both sides of the house, because I think early in my career I played all mode 1. And that's all I knew. But seeing the manufacturing side of it, it's definitely a much faster scale that they're wanting to go at.
Good. Yeah, hopefully later on we have time in the panel I can just kind of explore like the type of skills you're seeing are needed between mode 1 and 2. But maybe let me go to Brandy and ask that same question. You just kind of get your thoughts on what does it mean to you and your company.
Yeah, so I think we have a kind of a leg up on this, because a couple of years ago, Toyota had to go through this big transformation, coming here to Texas. Coming in with different cultures and different themes of working and how they're working. So they came here to Texas, and there was a big push to get rid of all that legacy stuff. So they kind of did a cleaning of the house, from from legacy to what are we going to look like in the future. And they started going from, process to technology to resources and just kind of making that decision, what is going to stay, what is going to go. And we had that divergent of the folks going, okay, this is all the legacy stuff. This is the way we've done it. Let's continue to keep the lights on because that's what our customers expect us to be. Well, then there's a big push to getting to the market faster. What are you going to do from a lender? What are you going to do from a car standpoint? When are you going to get these new features and functionality out to me? And so they had to, increase their speed to market on those processes. And so you saw a transformation of Toyota Financial Services moving from, the brick and mortar, and these are the rates that we always have. This is, nothing on the web, essentially call center after call center of how we're doing the lending to now you're seeing the big transformation of, apps, websites, plug and play situation. And then on the manufacturing side, it was automation, robotics. How can we, accelerate the speed for these cars to be made, not only the speed of these cars, but also the quality of these cars. And, everybody knows that your car is essentially, a computer with 4 wheels. And what do you do with all the technology when it's transforming at such a rate? How are you going to keep up with that from a quality and from a pricing standpoint? We know that, to increase the price, to reduce the price, you're going to have to accelerate your technology and move off of all that legacy slow stuff. So just to stay relevant, just to stay marketable, just to stay profitable, you're going to see a lot of that with the OEMs.
You can even tell just in the way you answer the question how much pace is important. Speed to market, get things out faster, accelerate, speed and quality, rate. I can tell it's a big part of what you're doing there. All right, Josh. So what areas or type of business processes have you had the most success with HyperAutomation?
Thanks, John. Before I get into my own thing, I just want to say, Brandy, everything you said makes sense. And to me, for Toyota, it should be on brand, right? Because you're the company that, if I remember my history, brought lean manufacturing to the United States, changed the entire automotive industry, right? So I can imagine Toyota is absolutely behind embracing Mode 2 wherever you can, right, in the process. With Aiden Technologies, obviously, it's super important to me and to our entire business model in that we are a hyper-automation technology. So we are constantly pushing the envelope in areas that I guess you would refer to as Mode 2 and encouraging customers to give this a try. We're bringing hyper-automation to endpoint management and endpoint security. And when you think, or at least when I think about the field of endpoint management, I ran an IT consultancy in New York for the better part of 20 years, 22 years maybe. Then I did work, as you mentioned, as a CTO in private equity for a couple of years, 7 years in healthcare. It's just so obvious to me across my entire experience before Aiden that endpoint management hasn't really changed all that much since I entered the IT field. And it's been ripe for some kind of innovation. There just needs to be a change. There's 40-odd tools on the market that do endpoint management. I don't want to name any of our competitors, but there's lots of them out there, and they're good tools. But those tools require that engineers still do a tremendous amount of manual work. I was showing someone this the other day. The average company is doing over 22 steps, and that's if they're kind of best in class, to just take care of computers and update them and patch them. And some companies have 200 steps in their process. I've seen it. We're bringing that down. We're reducing the amount of manual engineering labor, but more importantly, we're reducing the opportunity for human error. Computers do something very well, which is repeatable processes. And so I just think there's opportunity, whether it's us or someone else, for hyperautomation, Mode 2 invention to come into the endpoint management space. So to me, it's everything that we're doing, John, and thank you.
Good. All right, let's get Tom into this. I think I'll go with the same question, Tom. Which areas or type of processes have you had the most success with hyperautomation?
Sure. So one area we've done really well with that is robotic process automation for a number of different business applications. Now, that's not my area, but whether it be entering just data that would require a lot of manual work that's monotonous, prone to error, we've had some great success there. Now, personally, I'm all about mode 2. I'm not really a mode 1 person. So understand, like, when I give my answer, I really believe in agile. I believe in DevOps. I believe in cloud. As part of that, we have some really good pipelines. Pipelines that we build are created through an automated process. So we probably have several thousand pipelines that all these different product development teams use. We generate those in a way that has our static security scanning, our open source software licensing and vulnerability detection, our code coverage, and all of our pipelines get approved by our cybersecurity architecture team also, in order to ensure that we're delivering a secure code, because we're a financial company, but every company has a concern about cybersecurity these days, about governance, risk, compliance, and privacy. And so the automation we built into our pipelines ensures that. Now, is it the fastest thing? Not always. Sometimes you can deploy faster by hand, but then you're running the risk of errors, you're running the risk of shortcuts being taken, and so it's better for us to have that through that whole process with a pipeline, with approvals, and it continues to deliver value, and you have much better control over ensuring your production environments and your test environments match. So that's where we've had a lot of success.
So Tom, as a Mode 2 guy, have you had to change how you run Mode 2 projects versus maybe more classical Mode 1 as far as fail fast or difference in governance?
It's kind of challenging when, sometimes the executive team thinks in Mode 1. They think about every project having a delivery date. When you work in waterfall, yeah, there's a date. The date's always wrong, but there's a date, right? Whereas in an agile world, you can kind of predict your velocity, and then you can give a more accurate representation. So that's sometimes that culture change is to, when there's maybe an enterprise PMO system that tracks project time and what people are working on, and you're trying to explain, we have epics, and we have features, and we have user stories, and it's just, we don't want to duplicate all that work and put it in a planning system in addition to all the other work. And we want to continue to deliver value and go faster, and removing administrative overhead as opposed to adding more, because it is just this challenge of two different ways of thinking, and to think we don't have it all answered, honestly.
Good. I don't think any of us have it all answered. Brandy, is there a particular technology approach, whether it be AI, RPA, machine learning, BPM, that has enabled your organization to get the best return on your projects?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I was just going to comment to yours. Do you think the maturity of your agile teams would allow you to at least forecast where you think your technology is going to be delivered? And because that's what I was going to say, is that's where we found that as the maturity of the teams grow, you can actually forecast when you think that you're going to be able to deliver maybe the first iteration of some technology, and then kind of work from there.
Yeah. We're getting better at it. Some teams are better than others, honestly, right? And so some teams have been doing it for 3 or 4 years, and they're very predictable. Others are still early on that journey. We're going to scaled agile framework, and so with that requires some learning and trying to get different systems in place. And then there's business partners that are outside of IT, and they need to understand too, and they need to be part of that journey, and it's trying to meet them where they are and showing them what's possible and showing them the success of other business partners who are working in agile and how they can have faster releases. So it's a longer term journey. It doesn't happen all that fast with a bigger company. It's not a startup, right? Startup's a little bit different. You can go really fast, right? But when you're a larger company, not always.
So I was going to say that we have 2 instances of where we've seen success, one in the HR and one in IAM. And I would say HR, it's definitely the RPA. We all know that we're having attrition out, just exponentially, double digits. Most companies are feeling it. Well, how's your HR going to keep up with that? Whether you're out there, getting resumes, or whether you're trying to get the interviews together. And so we found a lot of success with our RPA. And so we've rolled out hot and heavy on that, just to keep up with the speed of the market, and ensuring that we're grabbing those candidates as fast as we can out of the market and getting them in front of the hiring managers and getting them through all the processes that entail to get somebody hired. The second one is the IAM, and I think that goes well with the HR, because as people are leaving, you're going to have to term them. And so where are you going to do that? Again, that poses a great burden to your team if they're doing that manually. And so we've had success with that as well, and that is AI. And that has kept up, again, with the attrition and getting those customers and getting those candidates through the door and getting them termed and, getting the ones that are leaving termed and the ones that are coming, provision their access. And so that has helped the teams keep up with that as well. So.
Before I go to the next question. Yeah.
Because my mic's not operating. Okay. Brandy, back to that system process that you're working through. How do you measure your talent? Let's start with how do you select internally the talent to be systematic in those processes? Where do you place those? And if you're weak in some areas, where do you find them?
Good question. So I would say on the talent front, when you're looking for that internally, we have a program that kind of identifies folks that are looking for transition. They're looking for some kind of, new skill, new, new position, whatnot. And we kind of identify those folks, and then we put them in front of those managers. We all know in the security area that, talent is, a deficit right now. So we look for, the aptitude. Are you, and the willingness, and are you, willing to take on new frontier, take on a new system, learn something new? Aptitude, do you have the skill set? Maybe not dedicated specifically to development, but you certainly can work in some other some area with your skill that you have. So we've been able to upskill folks that have wanted to transition to other ones, other areas, and then we've had to go to the market, and we've had to get in front of those hiring managers, recruiters, anything you could get out there. We've had to really pound the pavement to get those A1 resources and get them in the door. But again, it's a fight, and you have to have speed to that, because you are in the market, and they're applying to multiple different entities at the same time, and they're going to take whatever, they're the first to the offer, and not necessarily, they're going to not wait for the second one or the third one thinking that they're going to better offer. So they're going to take what they're going to take, and you have to be fast for that. And so we've allowed fine-tuning our processes and automating where we can has allowed us to get those resources that we've wanted, whether they're internal or external, because everybody knows everybody's looking. So whether they're internal or external, they're looking.
I think we have a question in the back.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So, with the work in global payments, I manage cloud data and analytics, and I have a question. We've talked about process, culture, and all things, but honestly, and this is just my disagreement. Rubber meets the road. It's what people are incentivized on, what people are rewarded on. So how do you balance this? Do you reward the people who keep the lights on, keep it stable, do all the standard things? How do you reward people who embrace the new agile, all the new stuff, fear of failure, fail fast, all those new mantras? Where's the balance? How do you do it? Because unless that is demonstrated and that is shown, people will do what my take is that people will do what they're rewarded, incentivized, promoted on. So how do you handle that problem?
I have an idea. When you look at, I try to look at people who are hungry, and who are the ones who are contributing to GitHub, who are the ones who are going to meetup groups. Those are the ones I'm going to want in Mode 2, those who are engaged in the community, right? There are sometimes I see, honest, and again, I told you I'm Mode 2, right? I see some of these Mode 1 roles as those individuals who are maybe good, steady performers, but they're not going to be the one going home and learning Web3 with Nick or studying cloud with Duke over there, right? They're the ones who are going to just do the regular job and be consistent. But when we talk about new technologies and where's your company going with Web3, where they're going with decentralized contracts, you need people who are hungry. And as part of the hiring process, I'm looking for people who are contributing to GitHub, that they're going out in the community. They have a social media presence that demonstrates for the past year or two that they are engaged. Every person I've ever interviewed says, oh yeah, I'll learn everything you want. I want to see the person who I don't have to ask that question to because they've demonstrated that prior. And so that's what I'm looking for as we continue to move towards this Mode 2 world. One of the best hires I ever had was a gentleman named Eric, and he came from I called him Fast and Furious because he came from the Los Angeles area. He was really into car culture, and he tweaked car computers as a side business. And like, if he can tweak a car computer, which is not documented, and someone's in your yard at 11 o'clock who wants to go home and you've got their car broken and he figures it out, he's exactly the type of tinkerer that I wanted to hire, and I hired him, and then he moved back to California. Now he's moved back to my new company I work at, and he's got a really good role there. So that's kind of how I think of it, is finding people who are hungry, finding people who really enjoy it. And the ones who maybe it's a job and they've done it for a while and they don't really have tons of future ambition, maybe they're the Mode 1 people. So
is that sort of the future of IT? You've got the grunt workers keeping the lights on, and then you've got the high-value, highly visible developers in IT? Because that's kind of the trend I'm seeing.
I think so. I'm not saying I'm right. I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah, because you either have the CIO who's all about development and ignores the lights on work, and then those people get grunt, or you have the CIO who is all about the foundational controls, and then the business people get mad because they're not innovating fast enough. So what I find is I have a CIO that's Mode 1 for 3 years, he gets fired because there's a lot of disruption, and then I get a new CIO who's Mode 2, he lasts 3 years, and then I'm back to Mode 1 again. How do we stop this flip-flop?
I think it's exactly what you're saying, right? It's why we have chief digital officers and now chief innovation officers and chief, it's because there is a little bit of the, hey, I've been successful for 40 years, I'm just going to keep on doing it this way, right? But I think there's also a lot of them who are like, no, I'm actually willing to be innovative, but there is some things of like, there is innovation for, I think the Gartner PACE model where you go and say, hey, I got systems of commodity, I'm going to buy it SaaS, or I'm just going to let it run the way it runs, because, it's like what I always told people when I was a CIO at MGM, like, nobody gives a shit what our HRIS system is. Like, nobody's like, wow, I bet you they have the best IT staff running this stuff, right? Nobody cares. The systems of innovation and systems of differentiation, yep, let's go Mode 2, let's go as fast as we can, because that stuff matters and that adds value to the business. So back to, if you're not doing value stream analysis on what you're doing, and by the way, there is, I feel defensive for the Mode 1 guys, and I shouldn't, but there is, like, you do need the guy who's gonna, I got a big network, it's just gotta stay on. Can you please keep it on? You don't need a whole lot of agile around that. Once it's up and going, it's up and going. When it comes down, yep, let me go fix it, right?
I would beg to differ with that, Scott.
Okay, I'm good with
And not just to be controversial, but I don't know any CIOs or CTOs or CISOs that are getting a whole lot of extra budget right now, even though we have big problems. And so what are they being asked to do? They're being asked to innovate and automate and figure out ways to do things cheaper, but faster and better, right? It's really hard to do cheaper and faster and better without innovation. So I really think this whole subject, and you asked the question, like, why do we flip-flop back and forth? The best companies in the world aren't flip-floppers. Jim Collins said in Good to Great that the best companies, and that was his hypothesis, and they studied it, they not only had the run the business guys, but they also had the whole team of people doing innovation flywheel, right? They call it the flywheel. Gartner has called it Mode 1, Mode 2, but it's the same old concept. And if a company's going to be successful in the modern world, they need to do them both well at the same time. They need to reward them both equally at the same time, and they need to throttle between the two. And I can talk about that a little bit more. I have a colleague at Google. We all know they're one of the best companies in the world, right? I think we would agree. They're doing really well. They've created a whole role around this called the SRE, the Site Resilience or Site Reliability Engineer. The Site Reliability Engineers, their whole job is to look at the indicators, right? What they call their, not SLAs, but SLIs, right? Their service level indicators. And so Google Search, for example, they have a 5 nines reliability that they will get back to you on every single request, right? With 5 nines reliability. They look at that every day, and they dial how much should we be innovating in new products we're bringing out on the site versus how much should we dial that back and be kind of Mode 1, right? And then what they do is they look at, okay, we can relax. We have this margin of error, and if it's getting too big, Well, we can tighten down controls, right? If it's getting too small, we can ratchet up controls and hold people to really tight processes. We can also throw 20% of our engineers on development, but maybe we ratchet that up to 30%, right? That's exactly the job of these SREs, and that's why they're leading. They're managing both ways.
You pretty much answered the question I was going into, but I want to continue it anyway. You've talked about innovation. You're talking about rewarding employees. By the way, Steve Pettit, Verizon, head of application security. We've done some really innovative stuff in regards to what you're talking about. And I want to talk to you later about who has a better process. But the question I have is, we've done a lot for innovation. I've actually worked with some of my team members for them to submit patents out there. We've actually do a lot of machine learning. We promoted somebody who came in as an intern to become a very model machine learning expert. Mm-hmm. We've also had teams that get awards out there. So we reward the employees in regards to this, and what's starting to happen is these people with the innovation, the recognition, all of a sudden they get poached from other employees. So the question I have in regards to employee retention, and you've answered part of it, but how do you take it to the level to say to keep them active? I'm not talking about doing things like stock incentives, which take years to build up, but what kind of things do you do now to keep people retained? Because these are very talented people. They can go almost anywhere.
Well, it's not about the money as much as it's about the excitement, the innovation, the change, the learning. And we all know that, right? Sorry.
I think it's building up a trust, right? It's going to be hard to keep someone if they're going to get double the money, right? I mean, that's hard, right? And no matter how good of a manager you are. But there's sometimes, I just read 2 weeks ago, is that 70% of the people who've left roles in the past 2 years during the Great Resignation have regretted doing so. And so they've gone into different organizations where maybe the culture isn't what they thought. Maybe they didn't ask the right questions, right? They have maybe it's not consistent with their personal worldview. And so as a manager and a leader, taking an active role in your team. You know, one thing I'm doing is pushing my teams to speak at different meetup groups and getting engaged in the community and showing them that I trust them and I actually have a vested interest in them. I have lost people, honestly, during this Great Resignation. There's some companies in the room who've taken my people, and I'll talk to you later. But but I think, there's a lot to it, and I read the Gartner reports, and some of it I just wonder, have these people actually led a team? Did the people writing these reports actually do the job? I always wonder that, so.
And I would say, to add to that, empowering your folks, giving them that space to either fail fast, come up with innovative ideas, come up with some way, new way of doing it, and fixing the process, and allowing them to do that. If they see something, fix it. If you see something cool that you want to do, go do it. I think that gives people that edge, that they want to be able to have that space to innovate. But if they fail, that you got their back, that you're there for them, and you're giving them the space to succeed where they decide they want to go to.
Yeah, I do. Hi, I'm Cindy Heiner, JP Morgan Chase. So actually a statement and a question. So one of the things that I've noticed is in the world of fail fast is we have to be careful not to punish it, right? But to encourage it. I think that's a tragedy in terms of continual innovation. My question is around automation, particularly in the HR space, so I'm looking at you, how do you address diversity and make sure that you're doing what you need to do and still automating? And then a more general question is, does anybody have a story about how diversity has really helped their innovation?
I'll take the diversity question. I think, what I've seen in my teams in security is a horrible space for diversity. It's always been something that I've had to work hard to bring it in because it's not one of the most diverse industries ever. I think what you see when you start bringing diverse teams together, though, And it shouldn't just be diversity of culture and diversity of gender. I think we skip age a lot too, which I think is just as important, because bringing younger people into an older thing, they see the world differently. I think when people start to recognize that I think we sell diversity wrong, right? We sell as a step-up thing instead of a competitive advantage thing. The more that you get diverse groups together and everybody realizes, wow, I never thought and looked at the problem that way, because you see it from a different point of view, because you bring different experiences into it, then once teams start to gel and see that and respect each other's differences, I think it's good. And I think as the leader, it's your job to kind of back to the fail fast thing too. And you know, when people fail, say, great, that's awesome. Now we know that that's not the path out. So let's experiment and do another path and see how that goes. And I think it's also incumbent upon the manager to, and the leader of the team to, if somebody's sitting quiet in the room, say, well, hey, what are you thinking about it? What's your point of view? And pull them into the conversation. And so I think, you know, when you get diverse groups that start to feel fine being vulnerable to each other, then you get some really great innovation with people working together.
We look at it wrong-headedly, though. You don't get diverse ideas and experience simply from putting diverse characteristics together. You get diversity from putting diverse experience and thoughts together. So we need to stop looking at purely outward characteristics and look for diversity in thought and experience. That's how you build diversity.
Well, and it really goes into the way that you interview people and pull that out of them. And look for, in like, again, back to, I think too often it's like, oh, well, you know, they don't check the blocks on this skill set, this skill set, this skill set. And back to your point, okay, but let's look at this project that they did over here, which is nothing like what we've done. So, like, I think that's good experience. Let's pull it into the group, right? And so I think you just have to be very thoughtful about how you're building a team to build it into that and get that diversity of experience.
Yeah, but the difficulty is the myopicness. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, that's what Pat was talking about, Jeanette was about ready to talk about, is acceptability, okay? We have to create an atmosphere of acceptability in order for those that are, it doesn't matter, what's diversity? It's a difference of every individual to contribute to the team, to contribute to the company, from their strengths, okay? And so when you talk about that, they have to feel comfortable in being able to step out and say, I can make this better. Here's how I can do that. And that's what Pat, and sorry, I'm speaking for Jeanette, but she was about ready to say something like that. So address that.
Well, I think, Robin, and I agree with everything you've all said, but people have to stop thinking about diversity as a way to fill a scorecard, and that happens far too often. I think that if you're really embracing diversity, you're embracing all of those thoughts to the level of redefining your notion of success. And that's when it's really working, right? Because if a company has sort of a predetermined, or organization has a predetermined idea of what the definition of success is for a particular initiative, project, whatever it is, you're not really allowing the diversity of thoughts from those experiences to come through. You have to be open to change the definition of success. And that's when you really are embracing diversity to a higher level, and the best companies in the world, again, are doing that every day. Thank you.
You can't score that, right? Nobody looks at a board of 12 middle-aged white guys and go, I'm sure he's got diversity of thought, and I'm sure he's got diversity of experience, and so I'm good with that picture. So it's a great idea, but practically, it's just not going to work.
It will work itself out.
I agree.
Pay attention to
It might, if you can get through all the public, pushback of, again, you've got no diversity on your board. You can say all you want about,
takes courage.
good luck. Because I've yet to see an HR group that would say, yep, that's diversity, thank you.
So it's about curiosity and audacity. If you want big change, you've got to think about it completely differently, change your perspective entirely. The goals have to be audacious, they have to be bold, they have to be almost unachievable to stretch a team out. And they'll do amazing things if you cut them loose and let them do it.
And that's mode 2, right? That's mode 2 thinking.
But
Let's
it also
innovate what we're
applies-
doing.
It also applies to the production environment and keeping it sufficiently stable and reliable. Lots of change possible there.
I do think we talked a lot about kind of mode 1 versus mode 2 and the different types, and I think I've taken like 10 pages of notes here of things. So it's like, but I think that a lot depends. You know, I've spent a lot of time in process industries, refining, chemical plants. I'm going to tell you, risk is a big deal, and there's going to be a lot of mode 1, and mode 1 is a good thing, and there's a lot of mode 2, and mode 2 is a good thing. So I really think it depends a lot on the business you're in, around the balance of mode 1 and mode 2, safety, risks, those sort of things. But I also believe that, you know, mode 1 isn't about doing nothing. You can continue to drive and improve, make improvements in mode 1. So when you talk about retaining people in mode 1, everybody has to understand, what is my role? How do I fit in? You know, what am I doing as part of the bigger thing? And if people understand what they're doing, whether they're mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, if you understand what you're doing and how it fits in and how you can measure it, then you can feel like you're part of something. But if you can't put it in terms where people can really see how what you're doing contributes, some people are fine with that. But a lot of people really need to know, like, how do I connect? And whether it's mode 1 or mode 2, I think you can get there.
We have another question?
Yes.
So going to jump into it from a slightly different perspective. I'm a product manager, so I'm maybe one of those people that you might be wanting to retain. And I've had the experience of being on the other end of robotic process automation, nonetheless reaching out to hiring managers and speaking to them personally and being like, you're not on my desk. How come you didn't, from our conversation, you're a perfect fit, but it didn't come to me, right? So I guess the point I want to raise is it's great to hand people in certain roles a new piece of technology that might be getting them quicker to a certain goal, but I think you also need to teach people, like, what is machine learning? What's confidence? How do I understand this from whatever lay perspective I have to understand, well, I have so many candidates that on paper meet my requirements, but how can I estimate my margin of error to understand how much the tools are actually doing me a service and how much they're also filtering out enough talent? Because those are the people that are starting out, rebuffed by this whole process. They're going out with no-code, low-code tools and starting their own businesses and taking your talent away.
But what is your question?
It's not a question. It's just another statement. Similar to this thing about, we talked about fail fast and innovation. I can't tell you how many companies I've cycled through that had a great mission about innovation for me only to find out 2 or 3 years later they wanted to do the same thing but painted a different color. And I think that ultimately is a bigger sticking point than I give you 10% of your time every month to devote on your own innovative project. Is the bulk of my time devoted to a company that's going to, in the long term, help me keep innovating as somebody passionate in my field?
I'm gonna take that away from you and answer that question for them, because from an innovative perspective, one of the first interview questions everyone should be asking is, what is your risk adversity? So, and I ask that question, okay, of every person that I interview. So if you're talking about from a startup, innovative, kind of .com, sorry, been around a while, kind of perspective. But at the end of the day, there are different cultures in different companies. And not all innovative or, let's say, startup companies are stealing, quote unquote, the talent from enterprises just because they're startup. A lot of people go and stick their big toe in the water from a startup perspective. So, wait a minute, I got kids in college. I got, what's my motivation for having the job that I have? So I'm going to answer that. Sorry, guys. I'm going to answer that for you because not everybody thinks like you. I mean, there are a lot of people in this community that have people in college, that have kids that they have to support, and they're weighing and measuring what if and what's the risk. So risk adversity is a very key element of your statement.
Hey guys, my name is Nick James. I'm the founder of Web3 Texas. I like to also say, based on this conversation, that I'm a family reliability engineer to your comment, right? So there is mode 1 and mode 2 in families as well, right? So I wanted to ask a question maybe that sometimes avoid, and it's not like a gotcha. Sorry about that. It's not a gotcha, it's just, I want to understand your perspective. So when I talk to leaders about risk appetite and risk tolerance, I don't think leaders truly understand the difference or how to set and measure those two things. And I'd like to say that risk appetite is mode 1 and risk tolerance is mode 2. So I want to understand, when you're talking about fail fast, how do you set those metrics? How do you measure failing against those two?
Well, that is kind of a gotcha question, Nick, sorry. So there's a couple ways, right? If you're talking failing fast on a project, or you're going to create a new web UI with an A/B test, right? And you want to find out which one's better, right? That could be a fail fast. It's a little bit harder from a risk tolerance and appetite perspective if fail fast is a such cybersecurity breach, because your experiment was putting people into the cloud without the proper cybersecurity training and hygiene, and failing fast was a breach, which was a SOX finding. So this is where this is a little, you got to be careful, right? Because there's certain things you can fail fast at and be okay, and there's other ones where really failure isn't an option, right? Because you don't want to have those breaches or those cybersecurity or privacy leaks. So that's a little bit complicated.
Isn't there a difference, though, Tom, between taking a chance, which is what you just described, and taking a calculated risk, fail fast?
I agree.
Going out into the cloud, improperly secured, is 7 come 11. Throw the dice, catch me if you can.
I've heard there's a difference between fail fast and fail stupid.
Okay, guys, and I'm going to step in the middle of you guys because we're coming on to 7 o'clock. So we really need to kind of wound this up a little bit. We could be here for, gosh, Brian, you're not in charge. I apologize, but you're not in charge. So at the end of the day, we need to have Scott answer Jeanette's and Pat's rebuttal. And then we need to end up with you with your last statement so that we can end this well, okay?
I don't know that I was going to rebut what you were going to say. I think that is actually right. There are times when an example I use, an extreme example, when I was at the casino, is like if my CEO told me that we could go from a $10 billion company to a $20 billion company tomorrow if we turned off all our security controls, I would go and rip the plug out myself, because there's never been a breach fine over $1 billion. So we're 9 billion in the good. So let's go, right? But that's a realistically stupid, simple example. But I think there is a lot of, especially when you're in the leadership space, of sitting and making sure that, do we all really understand the risk tolerance? And as we empower people at a lower level, so empowerment's good because you're going to go faster, but boy, we better have conversations about what risk we're really willing to take and which ones we're not. And so back to, yes, I can fail fast on a website field. I probably can't fail fast on a credit card transaction. I probably should think that one through a little bit better. And so, in summary, I would say working as a mode 1 person and as a mode 2 person, I think they both have a lot to learn from each other, because I think there's also a lot of, sometimes the arrogance that comes with the mode 2 of like, I got it all figured out, and like you old dinosaurs, you don't get it. And it's like, well, actually, there are some process things that come with it that are actually pretty good. And sometimes also, mode 1 rises up above the factory floor a little bit better and understands the end-to-end, where mode 2 sometimes just understands their little piece of it. So I think, as leaders in this field, helping the two work harmoniously together, that's really our role, and that's where we can be successful.
No, I can't hear you. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. Sam, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah. Now, I was just telling this thing, if you think of in the very, very fundamentals, everything in the nature or the universe or the world, macro and micro. Macro one, you can think of the predictive one, they're on the mode 1. And mode 2 is the micro level one, which is the quantum one, if you call the quantum mechanics of the macro, the traditional mechanics one. I think if you think of that way, but there's still balance. Both exist. You cannot just eliminate one or the other. So it will be all there, and they will stay all together, and they will live harmoniously. And we have to some way make a path where these two things can coexist, So it's the nature that way. So
I think, and Sam, thank you. And Scott, to further with what you were saying, I really feel like companies don't just think about the amount of risk or the adversity versus tolerance, right? I really think companies think about the types of risk that they're willing to take. And companies differ on this widely, but in general, if I'm making kind of a broad generalization, what I've seen over the past couple of years is that we talked about startups, somebody had a comment. SMBs and mid-market to small companies are often willing to take, I think, more risk in the breadth area, meaning they'll buy a technology or invest in a technology that it may not be really deep in any one area, but it solves a lot of problems for them. It helps in a lot of different pain point areas, where large enterprises tend to want to see a technology has tremendous depth in a particular area, will solve a big pain point for them, and then they're willing to take a risk on it because the pain is so great and they're confident that this technology has the ability to address that particular pain. That's a generalization, but that is what I see, and I talk to a lot of companies as the CEO of a startup. So, thank you.
John? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you because you were already doing it, but you need to go down the line and finish up here, okay?
Yeah, this would be a good chance, hit on any things. Boy, I wish I got a chance to share this. And kind of keep it sort of concise. You want to go first, Brandy? Let's go down the line.
Sure. Back to and I'm going to be controversial here. The HR thing. Yes, I believe that you can automate, you can put AI in there, but you're going to need some people in there as well. And I think that is the only way you're going to ensure that you have diversity of thinking and get your team the way you want it, dynamic, and be able to be successful. And I know that's controversial, but I think it's So second thing is the question that Robin said that I always ask when I'm interviewing folks for security is, what of the domains that you like to work, which ones do you like to work in and which ones don't you like to work in? And I tell you, it's helped me find that unicorn out there that says, hey, I don't have any history of working in a SOC or anything like that, but I would love to sit there and work in one. And I'm like, got the job right for you. Send them over. And I was hiring them for like an architect or something. So you're able to kind of get those little nuances that folks don't have on their resume. They don't, and it's like, you can find them that way.
As long as you ask the appropriate questions.
Yeah. So.
Well, I really think with this topic, when you think about, and I like to go back to Jim Collins' Good to Great and the flywheel, or you look at Google and what they're doing with site reliability engineers, or you look at Gartner's definition of mode 1 and mode 2, kind of stability versus innovation. All these concepts have been around a very long time, and they're saying the same thing. that risk is not something to be avoided, it is something to be managed. It is something to throttle and think about where are the appropriate places for the particular company or organization to take risks. If you don't innovate and you don't take any risk, you're going to have just as much trouble if you don't, if you are completely, free from risk, right? Neither is okay. And it's about finding the right balance for every organization that works for that particular organization to look at their metrics and become best in class in their industry.
Scott.
I'll go quicker and not that you were long-winded. That is not what I meant. So no, I would say if you're going through that journey, it's important to bring in people from outside that have been wildly successful with it. But two, it's also important that you don't discount the people who've been with the business for a while and really understand it. Find the ones that are willing to embrace some change and want to learn new things, but still bring a lot of that business value in and marry the two together. You'll be much more successful in doing it.
My parting thought is, as a leader, you need to set the example and be continuously learning yourself, and your teams will follow you. Disruption's coming, and those leaders who aren't actively learning, getting engaged in the community, and understanding what's coming, their companies will be left behind.
And support. That's the reason why Elevate Exchange was formed, is to work with each other. It's not about me, it's about all of you. So it's about, it's about supporting each other and reaching out when you have problems. And we've been very myopic in that. And we need to stop that. We need to work together. We need to reach out and say, hey, I need your help with this, okay? So, Scott, you have something else to say?
Nope.
So, John, I took over. I apologize.
So yeah, we'll just wrap up. I think that I started off by saying I really was excited because I think this is a fun topic to talk about. And the reality is there's so many things I would love to jump into around skills, both IT skills, business skills, et cetera, but we kind of touched on it a lot. As you saw, the panel's awesome. And I think we achieved the interactive piece. So thanks to everybody for making it interactive. Because these sessions are a lot better when they get like this versus just one guy rambling through a bunch of questions. So thanks to everybody.
So we have about an hour before we have to actually leave. So you need to eat, drink, and be merry for the next 45 minutes or so, as we're out by 8 o'clock. Well, I don't have a watch on me, but as long as we're gone by 8 o'clock, I think everybody will be happy. So don't leave me with this, and be sure to bring, this is Robert's wine, right? So if you're leaving, pick up a bag on your way out, because this is a gift from Aiden Technologies. This is a gift from Aiden Technologies. And I'm going to say one more time, and you know me well enough to know that I don't stand behind many technologies, right? I don't put my information on the line. But Aiden Technologies, you need to take a look. I promise you, you will not be disappointed, okay?